Hello fellow wand lovers and welcome back to the channel. The third wave of TechArts customizations has finally arrived. Today we will be going over all the customization options available to Techter, explore their merits, demerits, and which ones I personally recommend to use. Wave Crash and Spread Shot still haven't received any customizations, which is a bit of a bummer. A few of these customizations are repeats of what we previously got on techniques of the same element, so this episode will be rather short. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk about what we got in terms of techniques. Foie brand received a small buff during this patch. This in and of itself makes it a tiny bit more desirable. So maybe there is something in the store for us to make better use of it? Type 1 Foie increases the attack range. This makes the uncharged version of the technique slightly more usable on Techter, as I often find myself out of range after a revoked pursuit. Other than that, there is not much to say. Vanilla Foie takes 6 uncharged casts to cause a Foie brand, which is unfortunately way too many. Type 2 Foie speeds up the slow technique significantly. It reduces the damage to compensate for the speed, and on paper would be the ideal customization for Techter if it wasn't for that tiny little thing that happened called Techter expansion. Prior to the expansion, Techter relied on charge techniques in order to apply an element to the wand. Nowadays we can just use an uncharged technique instead, and techniques are now being balanced in a way that makes them weak on Techter and Bouncer, so we generally don't want to use them too much. Unfortunately, this customization comes too little too late. Type 3 Foie is almost identical to Type 3 Foie, with the only difference being that instead of doubling our down accumulation, we're increasing our compound technique accumulation instead. It's also worth noting that on this customization it only takes 2 charged Foie in order to trigger Foie brand, but like I said before, we Techters aren't too interested in using charge techniques anymore. Overall, while I do like Type 2 Foie the most, I think I'll stick to Type 3 Foie on my wand. Barta has always been a rather daunting element gimmick for Techter. Prior to the expansion, it was downright unusable for us, because uncharged techniques weren't compatible with skip beat. Now, uncharged techniques are preferred due to being compatible with it. So let's see if the customizations aid us with Barta generation in any way. Type 1 Gibarta is an insane increase in range. You can hit enemies from across the entire map with it. Will it be useful on Techter though? Maybe for combat sectors, but as a daily driver I wouldn't recommend it. Type 2 Gibarta is a carbon copy of Type 2 Barta, which is only relevant if you reach Stage 2 of the Ice Sigil, which is a bit unfeasible on Techter. The Ice Sigil expires after 15 seconds, and if something goes wrong, our revoke combos could take longer than that. The only time Techter interacts with a Stage 2 Sigil is after using Barancian, and that is way too rare to bother with in my opinion. There is a better customization for Techter anyway. Type 3 Gibarta doubles the accumulation of Barta until you reach the first stage of the Ice Sigil. This actually makes Barta usable on Techter, as it now takes 2 uncharged techniques to reach the first sigil. After the sigil appears we simply use a charged Gibarta and get extra damage just like Zepheto intended. Overall, I'd say Type 3 Gibarta is an easy winner here. Now let's talk about Grants Glitter. Grants Glitter is the most Techter incompatible element gimmick, because it requires us to use techniques over and over, and that's just not how Techter plays unfortunately. Let's see if the customizations try to improve this in any way. Type 1 Gigrants increases the attack range. It's alright, but nothing groundbreaking. I can definitely see this being useful in combat sectors, but not as a daily driver. Type 2 Gigrants is identical to Type 2 Grants, and gives guard frames when casting the technique. This is only slightly useful on Techter, because it causes an extra photonic fury if you successfully block an attack with it, but usually you don't want to parry with techniques on Techter. This is more of a force thing. Type 3 on the other hand completely changes how uncharged Gigrants behaves. It is now a small 6 seconds long damage over time, similar to Gazond. If you remember, in one of my videos I did want an customization like this. Unfortunately, this doesn't fix the issue with Grants Glitter as it only boosts accumulation by 50%. On the bright side, this is probably the strongest light technique in the game now, and is very useful even without glitter. The charged version remains unchanged, but it was recently slightly buffed. In instances where you need to close the gap to an enemy, and the uncharged Gigrants is out of range, you can still rely on charged Gigrants just fine. On Techter, I would use either Type 3 Gigrants or Type 3 Grants. Preferably both, but we don't have the luxury of a bigger weapon palette. And that's about it for the third wave of TechArts customizations. Like I said, not a lot to talk about this time. Once the fourth wave comes out, and Wave Crash and Spread Shot finally get their customizations, I plan to overhaul my comprehensive Techter guide. I hope you'll look forward to it. Hopefully this little breakdown was helpful. How do you guys feel about the customizations though? And to the Force players in my audience, how do you like Force now that the expansion came out? I'd love to read up on your opinions in the comments. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care!